Hey everyone, what's up? It's Ventus with a new video series. This time I'll be doing an overview of each of the agents in Invisible Ink. I'll be going over their strengths and weaknesses, what they do best, and generally how they're used. So to start things off, I'll begin with the first agent you get in the game, Decker. A Decker has an on-file version and an archive version, two different versions of the same character, and they both, even though they're kind of different, they both relatively function the same way in that they have heavy early game power from their items. Regardless of which one you choose, they both have 2 speed. That's just innate to the character. And as of this current iteration of the game, he's the only agent who gets 2 speed at the beginning. So he fills a very specific and unique function. He's supposed to be used as this kind of scouting character. Now, the extra AP that you get from this 1 speed is actually pretty significant. In a lot of cases, you may need that 1 AP to move across a room full of guards, a room that's completely unsafe to stay in for more than one turn, so you can't just make a pit stop in between. But you also need to realize that the extra AP is not just for movement. AP can be used for peeking through doors, peeking around corners, observing guards and drones, so you can make a better plan for your next move. This means that you're going to have a lot more options with Decker. It may not seem like this extra AP is that useful, it may not seem like it's that significant at all, but it can be the difference between safely and stealthily completing your objective or alerting the entire facility that you're there. Now, this leads to his starting item on the on file version, the modded cloaking rig. The modded cloaking rig is Decker's version of the cloaking rig 2. It has the same stats, and the difference is that it only requires 2 speed to use. Its functionality is superior to the cloaking rig 1 uh, because it doesn't fizzle out after you take 4 steps. It cloaks you until the end of the next enemy phase, so as long as you're not in plain sight of them by the end of by the beginning of your next turn, you're gonna safely get out. It's basically used like an extra life. It's one of those really clutch items that you use in a situation that you normally can't get out of, but because Decker has this item to begin with, it means that he has the ability to make those pretty clutch plays from the get-go, from the very beginning of the game. Now, this is also helpful for other agents. As you progress through the game, you can pass this down to another agent. Since other agents don't get that extra speed in the very beginning, it's very cheap for them to level up speed, and you can just pass this down as a kind of hand-me-down, and then they'll be able to use Cloak. Um, that way, Decker can go for the Cloaking Rig 3, which is 2 speed away from his starting stats, but he'll generally be wanting to use those anyway, just because it's a better item. It's the AoE cloak version of the Cloaking Rig, and it can be very helpful in the mid to late game. If you're on story mode, like day 3, it's very useful. If you're on Endless, day 3 to 5 and onwards, the Cloaking Rig 3 becomes extremely useful. So Decker is the primary candidate for using that because he needs to spend less credits to get the amount of speed you need to use it. Now, the other thing that's good about the cloaking rig, the modded cloaking rig, is that starting with it means that he can use hollow circuit overloaders immediately. Hollow circuit overloaders is the augment that makes it so whenever you go into cloak, it produces a loud noise and it stuns everyone around you. Now, there's 2 functions to hollow circuits. It's first of all, you stun everyone around you, so obviously that's really nice. But the other thing is the kind of pseudo ping function of it, the ability to draw enemies towards the sound that the cloaking rig makes when you use it with the augment. This is extremely useful. It can draw the guards away from, let's say, another area that you really want to further investigate or you want to keep the guards away from. So you have all these options, and just because Decker has this item immediately, just because you don't have to go through nanofabs, go on missions just to find a cloaking rig, you have one right away, he can utilize the hollow circuits immediately. You get an extra augment anyway in the very beginning, so you might as well use Decker's slot on that. There isn't really much else that Decker can make use of, but that's basically the best use for that augment slot, the best use for this cloaking rig item. Now that we're talking about augments, let's look at his augment. Neural networking is an augment that allows Decker to uncover daemons in adjacent objects. Now, this is a really garbage augment. It's probably one of the worst augments in the game, just because you need to consider that almost every facility has a daemon database, which means that in almost every mission that you go on, you're going to be able to reveal every daemon on the map already. So there's no point using this. The other reason it's really bad is because you have to be right next to the mainframe object to actually use it. So let's say there's a camera across the room. Well, you're not going to be going across the room. You're not going to run across the room and scan the item with Decker's Augment. It doesn't work that way. The camera's going to pick you up. You're going to alert everyone around you, and you're going to create a situation where you're probably going to be in big trouble. So you can't even use this in those situations. The situations that you can use it in are, let's say, like I mentioned, Decker is this kind of scout character. If he goes on a lone wolf mission to the opposite end of the map compared to like the rest of your team, you just split up. Generally, that's what Decker is used for. He's really good at splitting up because he can get away from danger really easily. In that case, if he runs into, let's say, a safe or a nanofab, and there's a daemon inside of it, then he can scan it, obviously, and then that's when he can use it. But overall, the augment is pretty bad. You don't have many situations where you can use it, and even if you can use it, it's a very small situation. There are a very small number of situations where you can utilize it correctly. So that being said, Decker is just he's focused on the early game with his cloaking rig primarily. He's supposed to be this scouting unit that just runs around the map. One extra AP, like I said, it's quite significant. Remember, it's one extra AP each turn. On average, missions can last for at least 10 to 20 turns, even longer sometimes, maybe up to 50 turns or 60 turns if you have to hold out really long and you kind of get stuck, or if you get really greedy and you want to just cover all the entire map. You want to take all the money from the safes. You want to look at every mainframe object that you can access, like a nanofab or a server terminal, kind of like what I do when I play the game. I like to be a completionist, so Decker is very good for that. Decker gives you the ability to make these clutch plays that allow you to continue on and on and on and not get caught. And all at the same time, you're going to be getting a lot of money and accessing a lot of really nice items potentially. And that's just what he's used for. He is this scouting character. So that's the on-file version of Decker. The archive version of Decker is a little bit different. So let's start with the item that he starts with, the refurbished revolver. It's a ranged weapon that deals lethal damage and cannot be reloaded. It has no armor piercing, so again, Decker is this early game focused agent. Because this item is pretty awful after day 2 to 3 when a lot of the enemy units are going to have armor, you probably don't want to use this. Plus, you probably don't want to use it anyway because killing people is generally not a good idea. Killing people will raise the security level much higher, and people that the other guards that see a dead body, they're going to be alert immediately. And on top of that, you have to pay a cleanup cost for every dead body on the floor. So that's generally why killing is not encouraged. And this is a gun that kills, so it's not encouraged to use this. The situations where this is useful is in the early game when you're infiltrating a Sankaku facility, the drone-based facility that's located in Asia. You can take out the null drones. The null drones are unique to Sankaku, and they make it so that you can't hack anything around the null drone. And this can obviously create some really deadly situations. Let's say there's like an Akuma drone, or there's a camera, or whatever it may be that's near the null drone. And the null drone may be stationary or something. It doesn't move. Then you can't get rid of it unless you hack it. And okay, let's say if you hack it, it has a daemon inside of it. These kinds of situations do happen. So just by shooting it out, you ignore the daemon, you take out I guess the hack immune canceling field that it emits, and you make it so that you can access more of the facility much easier. That's what most of the lethal weapons are used for. Generally, I don't use them to kill. You just use them to take out these drones. These drones are extremely annoying. But as the game progresses, let's say you're playing story mode, after day 3, even day 2, and especially on the 4th day when you do the Omni mission, this item becomes almost completely useless because everything has armor. Almost everything has armor. And on endless, same thing, day 2 to 3, and especially if you're surviving for a long period of time, if you're surviving past day 5, where basically everything becomes omni, then you're gonna have almost no use for this refurbished revolver and the other items like the biogenic dart and the flurry gun will generally be better items to use if you want to use a ranged weapon or a lethal weapon. So again, the early game focus. That's what Deckers is primarily strong at. The augment on his archived version is pretty strong, actually. The augment is really good. Whenever a guard sees Decker, even in the peripheral vision, he gets +2 AP. Now, it may not seem like a lot, but we already established that 1 speed is a lot. And, well, this is basically 2 speed. The 2 AP that you get is equivalent to 2 speed. So it's actually worth quite a lot. It's much better than this really garbage augment that he has on his on-file version. The archive version actually does a lot better than the on-file version overall. It's just, he doesn't start with the cloak rig and you can't make those really clutch plays. The refurbished revolver doesn't really allow you to make many clutch plays that are clean anyway. You can make really dirty plays. And it's not really encouraged to make those kinds of plays. So with this, while you're sneaking around a facility, you can actually get not caught, but be seen in the peripheral vision deliberately. So what you can do is you can open a door or you can walk along the peripheral, get their attention, get 2 extra AP. 2 extra AP can allow you to, let's say, breeze through a room or just straight up bypass the entire room. And all they're going to do is they're going to investigate the area that you were at, and you can use that distraction to get around them. You can explore the facility better with the extra AP that you get, and obviously, because the guard is not actually alert, they're not going to be chasing after you. They're not going to be looking around for you. They're just going to go back to the previous position. And that's why this is very important. It's important because you don't have to get caught to trigger this augment. You just need to somewhat get caught. You just need to get caught by the peripheral vision. So when they say something like, "Did you see that? What was that?" Stuff like that. That's their peripheral vision. That's when they notice something in their peripheral. So overall, I think the archive version of Decker is a little more useful. It's just you don't have the ability to make those early game plays with the cloaking rig. So we've established through all this information that Decker is one of the strongest early game agents. So who does he work well with? Well, because he's so strong in the early game, pairing him with agents that struggle early is a really good idea. So when you pair him with someone like Nika, Nika doesn't necessarily do very well in the early game. She uses a bit too much power with this, and her adrenal regulator, her augment that gives her double attack, she gets to use 2 attacks per turn, and she gets extra AP. In the early game, she can't really utilize this because she doesn't have 2 weapons. She can't afford to use 2 weapons, and just overall, she's not that strong in the early game until you start equipping her with a lot of weapons. And the other one is Sharp. Sharp essentially has 0 augments in the very beginning of the game. But later on, once you start getting augments, you fill up his 6 augment slots. He becomes very powerful. He becomes one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful agent in the game. And, well, basically, Decker is perfect for carrying them through the early game until they become self-sufficient, until they become this one-person army. Both of them are like one-person armies. They can just carry missions by themselves just because their augments are so strong, just because they have so much potential. Now, the other thing is, if that's not enough, if that's not a good enough reason to start with Decker, then you can think about it this way. If you start with Decker, you don't get him in detention centers. I know it's a bit funny to think about it that way, but if you get him from a detention center, he doesn't start with his cloaking rig, and all you get is the garbage augment. You can't get archive versions of Decker in the detention center. So you're going to get this Decker. You're going to get the on-file Decker with neural networking, the really crappy daemon detection, daemon scanner, melee daemon scanner. So if you want to avoid that, just start with Decker. Start with Decker and at least get an item that utilizes his strengths. His modded cloaking rig is really strong. Or you can start with the archive decker. Again, if you have this decker, you won't get the on-file decker in detention centers, and you'll have this really nice augment, and you'll have an early game item that you can use to take out drones, or if you really need to kill, you can kill people that are in your way. So that's the incentive to take decker. That's the incentive to take decker as a starting agent, and basically, that's what you should be thinking of. You should be thinking that Decker is just this early game agent that you should be starting with, and he doesn't really have a function outside of that early game function. So that's it for Decker. That's it for this episode, and I hope you enjoyed this overview, and I hope it was helpful and informative. So I'll just log off for now. I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.